Welcome to the studio. I'm Sasha Qadri, and this is Can Technology Drive the Circular Economy? I am delighted to be joined by Colin Seward, the IT Director at Cisco, Joanna Pamphilis, the CDIO at UniCredit, and James Maunder, who was until very recently the Chief Information Officer at the London Clinic. So let's kick this off. It's obviously we're saying it's a lot to talk about. It's a very broad topic. I have some stats here. I hope they're broadly correct, which are that we produce around 50 million tons of e-waste every year. And we really want to move towards that circular economy where we eliminate waste, we recirculate, and we reuse products and materials. And actually, the basic premise is to just produce zero waste from the get-go. But we're not really there yet. How does a circular economy relate to tech? And I know we're going to get some slightly different perspectives. So, Colin, if you could kick that off.
Sure. So the concept of a circular economy sounds very simple. And I think we all intuitively think it's the right thing to do. And we probably think that we've been doing this for a long time. But the reality is that the world is still very linear. So the linear economy is you take stuff out of the ground, you make things, and then it's waste at the end of that. So the circular economy idea is you keep those materials going round and round in the highest value for the longest period of time. Globally, there's a circularity gap report produced every couple of years. A couple of years ago, it showed that the world was actually only about 9% circular. The most recent one, January 2023, it's actually gone backwards. The world is now down to about 7%. From the tech side of things, it's a little bit better, but we're certainly not claiming success. So I work at Cisco, we're a manufacturer. When we look at the e-waste problem, the latest e-waste report shows it's around about 17%. So better than the overall global average, but still a long way to go to solve that problem.
You know, when you look at simple examples of what technology has done and what they still have to do or can do. Simple examples such as the move of professional conferences to online has reduced carbon emissions. It improves, it reduces consumption of office supplies, simple things like that. Going back even some years, email, right? The ecological footprint of an email versus postal mail. So when we look at the impact technology can have, it's giving the visibility, it's giving the transparency across the value chains. So, simple things like that, digital is doing within, its industry, but leveraging that across industries, I think is where the greatest impact can be made to continue to improve those statistics.
We have a huge plastic waste problem, and that's really difficult to solve. And I think where circularity will get interesting is when we start talking about what are the types of materials that we as a society are willing to use versus those that we're not. And that's where I think, coming back to technology, that's where technology, I think, can really start to help us sourcing the right materials, using them wisely, and tracking their use such that they can be reused.
And I'd like to pick up on that because I'd like to get a better understanding of other ways, and that's one great example of how tech can enable circularity.
From the tech side of things, we are getting better at designing products that can be repaired. But then you have to have new skills in the field, knowing when to go and repair them, having people with the skills out there to do those repairs. We're getting better at looking at equipment at the end of life and working out what can it go on to next. Can we actually refurbish it? Can we remanufacture it? Can we bring it back in, go through working out what parts are broken, what need to be upgraded, and then give it, sell it again with a full warranty? And this is all great, but it then does depend on customer demand. So it is a demand-led thing. The more demand there is, the more we can produce, but also it requires on that closed loop from the customer side. We can ship product to them, which is built with circular design principles. But one of the things about circularity is it's not completed until you get it back, until you can work out how do you incentivize customers to return the product so you can do something with it.
It's interesting that the statistics are dropping, as you shared. why is it dropping? Is it because the companies aren't doing their role? Or, I think there's significant cultural differences across geographies, US, UK, Europe. So for me, this is a pretty critical point when we talk about circular economy.
In the design of product, you've got to design circularity in from the beginning. Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind. It's got to be circular. Let's work back from that. I think that's really critical. I think, though, there is then a need for companies and governments to educate society. We've got to go to where people are, and we've got to tell the story that facilitates a change in behavior so that end users start demanding the circularity that manufacturers and producers of goods are creating. So we've got to recognize in ourselves the human desire to have the new thing. And we need to get to a point where manufacturers are saying, here is a remanufactured unit which is just as good, and if we can make it better than the new thing, we'll start to change behaviors. But that behavior is critical.
I'm also close to the Alan Turing Institute. They're doing some lectures at the moment on the power consumption behind generative AI. $100 million to train ChatGPT 3, $1 million a day to run it. They also quoted some figures. ChatGPT query uses 100 times more power than a Google search. So I think we have to be cognizant those tools in the right circumstance are appropriate. Don't use those tools, as a general purpose get out clause.
Is there a responsibility on technology to not necessarily just make more products for the sake of it, and there has to be some push that there genuinely is a significant improvement in the technology as opposed to just, it's a new color, it's slightly quicker, it's slightly faster?
Products for the sake of products is a huge societal challenge. You see it in single disposable vapes, for example. There's an interesting use case that I'm aware of, which is the car brand Polestar, who have set in train an aim to make the world's first carbon neutral production car by 2030. A car company which frankly doesn't need to do it, but sees competitive advantage in maxing out on vegan interiors, recycled materials, carbon neutral by 2030, remanufacturing, dropping. They've already dropped their carbon emissions per car by about 40%. So there's some bright spots, and it's how do we focus the innovation into that rather than into the disposable culture, I think.
Maybe we will leave it there. Please join me in thanking my panel.